Now, in this edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, I'll be discussing the results of, and your comments from, the poll that asked the question, what was best in show at Star Wars Celebration? And before I get to it, yes, there were plenty of you out there who left comments saying something to the effect of none of the above, or Star Wars is dead to me. And by the fact that the total number of votes was lower than usual, I'd say a lot of you out there chose not to vote at all, which of course is fine and I get it. However, if you want, you can throw that line Obi-Wan says in A New Hope at me about who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him, because I do feel like there was a lot shown at Celebration that looked good and to get excited about. And as I always say, I don't want Star Wars to be bad, and I don't really care who makes it good or how, but at the same time, I'll certainly acknowledge when I feel it is bad or it's missing the mark, and I'll promptly talk about it. So if all the options from this poll end up being terrible, which I don't think will be the case, mind you, I'll certainly say as much after they've come out. Or if they end up being great, I'll praise them instead. In other words, I'll tell you what I think, and I'll keep making videos like these so you can tell me what you think, and hopefully we can continue to talk some Star Wars in a civilized manner. Anyway, let's now take a look at the results of the poll, and we'll see that Clone Wars Season 7 won by a wide margin, capturing 52% of the votes, with Episode 9 coming in second place with 19% of the vote, and The Mandalorian and Jedi Fallen Order tying for third place with 14% of the vote each. And then Star Wars Galaxy's Edge barely getting any votes at all, which I did kind of expect, but I was very curious to hear what people had to say about it in the comments. And speaking of those comments, let's now jump right into them, starting as always with the top rated one, which came to us from GD Supreme, who said, "For the first time in over a year, I'm hyped for something in Star Wars. The Clone Wars trailer made me feel something again, whereas I felt the rest were more generic. This was something special and by far the best." And I do agree, I think the Clone Wars was the best, but there was one other panel that was also extremely good, and I'm sure we'll get to some comments on it in a minute or two. Moving on then to a comment from Red5, who said, "What about the Crystal Crisis on Utapau?" Which, much like the Bad Batch story arc that is going to be in Season 7 of the Clone Wars, was a story arc that we got in incompleted form or rough animated form at one point. And there's nothing to say that if Season 7 of the Clone Wars is as successful as I think it will be, or beloved by the fans as I think it'll be, that they can't go back and finish some of these other story arcs. I mean, they've already upgraded all their software, it seems, so why not go back and do some of the other ones and have a Season 8 and call it The Untold Tales of the Clone Wars? Next up now, a comment from Nathaniel Miller, who said, "Maybe it's just nostalgia or going back to that comfortable, tried and true product, but Clone Wars is one piece of current Star Wars I'm completely confident is being done properly." And yeah, after the panel at Celebration, and even before to be honest with you, I didn't have much of a doubt about Season 7 of the Clone Wars. I really felt this was just going to be exactly what we all know and love and remember from before it got cancelled, which, don't get me started on that. Next up now, a comment from Jay Mikowski, who said, "The only reason why The Mandalorian is so low is because we couldn't see the footage from home." And this is, of course, the one that I thought was a close second place to Clone Wars. Again, if you got to see the footage, as Jay points out here. And, like, if you haven't seen it yet, find it somewhere online. I'm sure somebody's got it up on a YouTube channel somewhere. Just find it and watch it because it is incredible. And I don't know that I'm more excited about it than the Clone Wars, but damn is it close. And it looks like it has near movie quality production values. And then you consider the setting, which is a few years after Return of the Jedi, the characters that we're getting Mandalorians, that it's the underworld of the Star Wars galaxy, and this show has a ton of potential. Now on to a comment from DS1 Productions, who said, "It's going to take a lot more than that teaser to get me excited for Episode 9. Clone Wars, on the other hand, I'm very excited for. Good to have it back." And yeah, the teaser trailer was just that, a tease. It didn't really show us much of what the actual story is going to be. It just hinted at Palpatine coming back, and it also hinted that, or pretty much showed that we're going to be going to the crash site of the debris of the second Death Star, which is probably on Endor somewhere, or one of the other moons of Endor, or wherever it is. Anyway, it got me more excited than I was before, so I guess the trailer worked in that respect. Next, let's get to a comment from Stickman87, who said, "During the panel for The Mandalorian, John and Dave were practically giddy. Their love and passion for Star Wars was tangible, and I think the true love, passion, understanding of the source material has been missing from the recent films." And yeah, I could probably sit and watch those two guys talk Star Wars for hours, and what I wouldn't give to be in the conversation with them. And yeah, I think it's a matter of their passion and their excitement just oozes out of them, and it's contagious. Like, you watch those two guys talk about it, and you really want to see the project they're working on, and you don't necessarily get that same sense from some of the other current creators in Star Wars. And I'm not saying they don't love it, but they just don't exude it the same way that Filoni clearly does, and that Jon Favreau also did in this panel. All right, now a comment from Zev Benjamin, who said, "For me, both The Mandalorian and Fallen Order were high up there, but I have to give the win to The Mandalorian because I'm just very cautious about EA, but I trust Dave deeply." And yeah, as I said in my review of the panel for Fallen Order, it seemed like they went out of their way not to mention EA and kept telling us, this is from Respawn, which I understand because we all know EA does not have the best reputation right now. And I am excited for the game. I just felt like we didn't get shown all that much, really. I was really hoping for a little bit of gameplay, a little bit of telling us how the game is actually going to play. If there's anything new and unique about it that separates it from the crowd. Alright, now Jaxman7, who had this to say. Toss-up between Mandalorian and Clone Wars. There was a lot of passion in both panels. What they both shared, Filoni. That man should be in charge of Lucasfilm Productions. I agree. Filoni is the Padawan of George Lucas. He's probably the closest thing we'll ever have again to George Lucas. And I really do feel like he's getting an expanded role with the company, and over time he will probably have an even larger role, and who knows, maybe one day he will be president of Lucasfilm. Now on to a comment from Jag3, who said, Fallen Order just sparked that old Star Wars feeling inside of me that's been repressed for so long. The trailer gave me vibes of old Star Wars games. Hopefully it can live up to it. And yeah, I do agree, the trailer was great. It got me excited for, maybe going back to more old school Star Wars games. Not that there's been any new school Star Wars games except for the Battlefront games. But anyway, I am excited. As I said moments ago, just wanted some gameplay footage and maybe to hear a little bit more about how this game is actually going to play. Alright, now on to a comment from Arthur Wacker, who said, please could you make a video on the significance of the blue Star Wars logo for Episode 9? Do you think it symbolizes hope? Interesting question, actually. Traditionally, blue is a soothing color, so one could almost guess that maybe this is supposed to soothe the fan base. I honestly, I think they kind of had this planned all along, that they would go yellow, red, blue, but who knows? Maybe it is supposed to symbolize hope, and I guess the name of the movie, The Rise of Skywalker, also is supposed to symbolize hope, so you may very well be onto something. Alright, next then a comment from 108 Gary's, who said, I picked The Mandalorian because as awesome as Clone Wars is, it was always going to be a sure thing. The Mandalorian has so much potential and so much riding on its success in terms of Star Wars after the Skywalkers. Absolutely, The Mandalorian is very much going to set the stage for the future of Star Wars on the Disney Plus streaming service, and if it's very successful, we're probably going to get multiple seasons of it and many other shows just like it over time, and maybe less movies, which could be a good thing, I guess, since the movies will feel more like events again than they currently have. Though I'm not one who buys into the fact that Star Wars fatigue is currently what's hampering the movies. Next comment then comes to us from Bailey Glide, who said, it looks crazy what they're doing with Maul and motion capture. Absolutely. It looked incredible, even though we only got like 2 seconds of footage of the actual fight. But still, what they can do with that motion capture and the animation together really gives me a lot of hope that they'll give us some more quality animation in the future. Not to knock on Resistance, but maybe movies every so often, or the season 8 of Clone Wars, or just another new show just for the streaming service that they put more money into than they do into Resistance. And speaking of Resistance, let's get to this comment from Droid Walks Into a Bar, who said, what about Resistance Season 2? This poll is too early. And yes, my apologies to Resistance fans out there for not including it as an option or putting up the poll the day before the panel actually was, but if you did watch that panel from home, you didn't really learn much, though if you were there, you got to see the first episode of Season 2, and quite honestly, I haven't really looked for reactions or descriptions about it yet, so who knows. Now on to this comment from Bailey Julian Hawes, who said, Episode 9 is gonna suck. This new trilogy is already ruined. Why is there people hyped for it? It's stuff we have all seen before. Well, it's a matter of people wanting to be hopeful. They want to be excited for Star Wars. They want it to be good, which is kind of what I was saying at the start. I have no interest in Star Wars being bad. I want it to be good, but I'll tell you if I think it sucks. That being said, the only thing I've really been disappointed with, and you can disagree with me, and I know many of you out there do, was The Last Jedi. Everything else has been decent to excellent, to be honest with you. So I'm not one who's given up hope. I thought the sequel trilogy has been kind of a mess, but there's every chance they could give a good movie and cap this off well. Alright, let's now move on to a comment from Boop Boop, who said, "Am I the only one looking forward to Jedi Fallen Order?" And the answer to that is no, you're not the only one. Okay, now on to this from Dectonics Incorporated, who said, "Come on, everyone is clearly excited for the new LEGO Star Wars game. And honestly, until right now, I hadn't even heard about it, so call me excited for it." Now on to a comment from Marcelo MN, who said, "Episode 9 was cold and bureaucratic, like Kathleen Kennedy and her cast. I felt nothing. Clone Wars was warm, and you can tell these people really love it. Filoni worships his master, and his crew worship him. This is what the real Star Wars has been built upon, and desperately needs to survive in the future." And yeah, I agree. Passion for the franchise is the key to the future, and you get that out of a Dave Filoni, and when you watch Kathleen Kennedy, you get that more businesswoman kind of approach, where she, talks about how much she loves Star Wars and how much it all means to her, but you don't get that same feeling. Now, I've talked about it before. I don't think she is really the biggest Star Wars fan in the world, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she's just a very reserved person. Either way, you can't beat Filoni. You can't beat that guy. He's the future of the franchise, and I fully believe one day, yes, he'll be president of Lucasfilm. Moving on then to a comment from YTCTC, who said, "I understand why Galaxy's Edge is in the minority because it's hard for many people to get out to Disney parks, but as a fan of the parks myself, it is easily the most exciting. From what we've seen so far, it looks like this will be extremely immersive, even more so than Pandora, the world of Avatar from 2017. Also, building a theme park land requires creating real-life, expansive environments, which we haven't gotten yet with Star Wars, and I just can't wait to step into a galaxy far, far away in real life." And I think both your points were absolutely right. That first, it is going to be an incredible experience for those who can afford it, because not every Star Wars fan can obviously spend thousands of dollars to take a vacation to Florida or California to spend some time in Star Wars land. Nevertheless, from what I've seen of it, it does look incredible, and it looks like one hell of an experience if you have the money. And now time for the last comment, which comes to us from Benjamin Lerman, who said, "I say all of it." And to move into my closing thoughts now, I do have to kind of agree with Benjamin. Pretty much everything I saw looked good, if not great in the case of The Mandalorian and Clone Wars. And if everything we saw here ends up being a big hit with the majority of fans, and that's a big if, this could be a very, very good year for Star Wars. And the question will then be, what can they do to follow it up? And I find it very interesting that they announced another celebration for next year already, when currently we know almost nothing about what's to come after everything we're getting this year. So clearly they must have quite a bit still in the works. And again, I just want to love Star Wars, and I hope all of or most of what we saw at Celebration this year is great, and that they can keep the ball rolling into next year and years to come. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me your thoughts on anything or everything from Star Wars Celebration this year. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.